County, covering the municipalities of Ackworth and Kennesaw and surrounding areas. The incumbent is Ed Setzler, the sponsor of House Bill 481, Georgia's fetal heart rate bill that passed the Georgia Assembly in 2019. I am Jacqueline Bedadapour, the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Committee. Assisting me tonight is Cobb Democrats' first vice chair, Matt Southwell. Matt has coordinated the technology tonight to make all this possible and will be on the dashboard controls. We are speaking tonight with 3 Democratic candidates who will appear on the June 9th Democratic primary ballot in House District 35. We have Ms. Lisa Campbell, Mr. Kyle Renato, and Dr. Elizabeth Webster. Welcome all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Before we get started, I will make my plea to our viewing audience. Please vote by mail on June 9th. Due to the public health crisis, there may be poll worker staffing shortages during in-person early vote period and on election day. This will likely result in a reduced number of voting locations, long lines, overcrowding, and increased risk of COVID-19 exposure. You can vote from the comfort and safety of your home by absentee ballot. You do not have to put your health on the line to vote. And now with recent developments, you may have the option of vote by drop box without requiring postage. Visit our website, cobbdemocrats.org, for more information on vote by mail. So let's hear from the candidates. We're going to start with a 2-minute opening statement, followed by questions with a 90-second response time, 45-second rebuttals if a candidate or a candidate's position is called out by the opposing candidate, and then 2-minute closing statements. Matt Southwell will be keeping the time. So let's start with Lisa Campbell. Lisa, please introduce yourself to voters. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Cobb Democrats for hosting this town hall. Thank you to Kyle and Elizabeth for joining. And thank you to all the faces who are joining on Facebook. My name is Lisa Campbell, and I'm running for the Georgia House of Representatives in District 35. I'm running for office because I believe in the power of equality. It's that simple and that important. I believe equality means access to the resources and infrastructure that ensure every Georgian has a solid foundation to achieve their potential. I'm proud to be a longtime Georgian, and as a corporate business executive and entrepreneur, I bring more than 30 years of professional experience to the role. As a consultant for Georgia companies like Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola, I have a proven history leading teams and building coalitions with diverse viewpoints to solve complex problems. There has never been a more important time for our neighbors to stand up and vote to protect equality. Equal access to healthcare, education, reproductive rights, jobs, and voting. Many of our basic freedoms are under threat. And now, with this terrible pandemic, many of the inequities of our systems are becoming widely visible and increasingly fragile. As your legislator, I will make our Georgia stronger by ensuring our government is well-funded, efficient, and responsive to our people. I'll work to strike down the extreme HB 481 legislation and protect our rights to bodily autonomy. I'll fight for equal access to high-quality healthcare so every Georgian can afford to seek care close to home. I will empower our teachers with better compensation and fully fund our educational systems. I will lead with truth, integrity, and a collaborative approach so that we can strengthen and become a more unified Georgia and empower change together through equality.
Thank you, Lisa. Kyle, you're next.
There I am. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Jackie and Matt, for hosting this, for doing this. I hope everybody's staying home, staying safe, and staying healthy during this coronavirus quarantine. First of all, I want to welcome Elizabeth and Lisa into this race. As many of y'all know who might be watching this, I've been invested in this campaign for a couple of years now. And I want to just say welcome to the both of you for also contributing and raising your voices. I'm somebody who believes that we need more people invested in the political process and not fewer. So I really am genuinely grateful for you raising your voice, and I'm looking forward to talking about all the issues that we care about tonight. So just to introduce myself, my name is Kyle Renato. I'm a proud Democrat running to represent Ackworth and Kennesaw in Georgia's House of Representatives this year. In a former life, I used to be president of a group called the Acworth Board of Young Aldermen. We're a civic group, kind of a city commission connected to the city of Acworth, which advocates for community service and civic participation among Georgia's young voters. And as you can imagine, that's something that I'm still very passionate about today, something that really animates my candidacy, and is a reason that I believe we need more young people involved in the political process. I'm somebody who's been invested in Acworth and Kennesaw my whole life. In fact, 3 generations of my family still live here in this area. I'm a North Cobb warrior. My mother is a proud North Cobb warrior. And it's fair to say, in all the time that my family has lived here, we've seen this area change quite a bit for the better, right? We've got lots more economic growth going on. We've got lots more people here, lots more diverse communities here. And it's fair to say that there's never been a better time than today to be living in Acworth, Kennesaw, which is why it's really so disappointing that we currently have representatives in the Georgia General Assembly that seem to want to take us backwards, that would pass legislation like House Bill 481, that would pass bills that try to discriminate against the LGBT community and cut funding from our public schools. I believe that's wrong, and that's why I decided to run for this office in order to bring fresh representation to Acworth and Kennesaw.
Thanks, Kyle. Next up, Elizabeth Webster.
Hi, my name is Dr. Elizabeth Webster, and I'm a progressive candidate running for House District 35. My story is uniquely American in that I was able to rise from circumstances from which I began my life. Like many of us, I came from struggling working family. I began in poverty that included food stamps, Medicaid, and welfare. I experienced homelessness. I've known hunger. I have felt the sting and shame of not having enough of anything, but I always had hope. My hope came from attending schools that were not underfunded, safety nets that kept me from falling through the cracks, and my vote was not disenfranchised. My reproductive rights were not taken from me. I did not fear mass shootings. My hope came from being able to find a job when I sought one out. My hope came from being able to go to the doctor when needed. But in the 25 years I have lived in Kennesaw as a homeowner, a public school parent, a neighbor, I've watched our friends and neighbors lose hope as they lost their homes and faced economic uncertainty. I watched our friends and neighbors lose hope when informed that insurance would no longer cover their chemotherapy. I watched our local college graduates lose hope when they couldn't find a job. I'm running to restore hope back into our American dream because despite our hard work, our current leaders do not work to rebuild our access to the American dream. I'm running to bring back the confidence that with hard work and opportunity, you can once again participate in your own uniquely American story. I am Dr. Elizabeth Webster. I am the progressive candidate, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we'll move into questions now. First question, what do you feel is the most pressing issue for House District 35 constituents, and what would be your top legislative priority if elected? We'll start with Kyle Renato.
All right, hey everybody. So I think the most important challenge that we're facing in the General Assembly in 2021, it's got to be coronavirus. It's got to be our response to COVID-19. It's at this time that we really see the importance that we need leadership from our elected officials, which, to be honest, we're sorely lacking right now. So the 3 things that I would certainly address legislatively to address this crisis has to be access to healthcare. We should be expanding Medicaid for tens of thousands of Georgians and all the folks across Acworth and Kennesaw so that we have access to quality, affordable healthcare. This is a jobs question, right? We need to make sure that we as a General Assembly are passing legislation to make sure that all the folks who have lost jobs, all the folks who have lost access to an income are supported. I saw a statistic the other day that something like 300,000 Georgians filed for unemployment just in the last week. That's going to be a crisis that doesn't just persist for the next few months, but persists for the next few years. And we need leadership in the State House that's going to address that. And finally, education, which is something that I have a very personal experience with. We need to make sure that all of our students who are doing a great job right now with this social distance learning, we're giving them the resources and the investment in a public school opportunity to make sure they have access to a great education. We need leaders who are going to do this and are going to be honest about it. And that's how I would address it in the State House.
Thank you. Dr. Elizabeth Webster, what do you feel is the most pressing issue for House District 35 constituents, and what would be your top legislative priority?
Sure, thank you. So, our district is a solidly working class community. The median income falls between $62,000 and $69,000 a year. Currently, right now, we have 10 to 12% of our population falling below the poverty line, and 40% of our children receive free or reduced cost lunches. So, economic opportunity and security is a central concern for HD 35 constituents. My top priorities would be first, healthcare. Without a Democratic majority in the House and Senate, we will not have the votes to overturn HB 481, also known as a heartbeat bill. So if there is a Democratic majority, we can simply repeal it. An alternative approach is to propose a healthcare bill that expands Medicaid and addresses women's reproductive choices and disparate to address the expansion of contraceptive coverage, elimination of mandatory counseling, and research and development of interventions to address the disparate health outcomes for Georgia women, particularly Black women. Second would be economic recovery. We need to ensure Georgia remains economically viable post-pandemic. The economy will be sluggish, and there's a 50% chance that there will be a recession. We need to work to quickly flatten the pandemic curve, continue to keep businesses afloat by accessing the Georgia Rainy Day Fund, and stimulate consumer demand post-pandemic.
Thank you. Lisa Campbell?
Yes, if elected, our top priority would be equality in all areas. That's our platform. But given our current situation, our top priority has to be healthcare. It's pretty basic and it's all encompassing. I mean, our constituents literally just want to know, how are you going to save my life and how are you going to save my livelihood? As Kyle and Elizabeth mentioned, how do we get equal access to healthcare during COVID-19, but beyond? How do our healthcare providers get the tests they need to begin assessing our population's health status? How do we as citizens get tests to determine if we can go back to work or care for our aging parents? We may want to know, how do I pay for my tests? Are they free? What if I don't have insurance? When do I know I have immunity so that I can take care of my aunt when she gets sick or go back to my job without exposing my coworkers? They want to know, how do we share information about healthcare with our citizens so they know if their mother in the nursing home has COVID, if their son in the assisted living facility is sharing a room with an infected patient? How does our daughter, a nurse at Kennestone, know she'll have enough PPE to wear during her shift? Equal access to healthcare services and healthcare information has got to be our shared priority so that we can create smart plans for getting back to work, getting back to ball games, getting back to the basics of our lives.
Thank you. And now we'll start on the second question. We'll start with Dr. Webster. Last year, or at the, I guess it was this year, at the close of session, although it's the suspension of session, they haven't closed yet, they approved a tax cut, income tax cut. If you were elected and sitting in chambers, would you have supported that income tax cut?
No. I think going into the 2021 legislature, I think we're going to be facing some key challenges. As you mentioned, the tax cut, the budget. So we're dealing right now with the repercussions of the Republican tax cuts of 2018. Georgia will be seeking to make up the shortfall on the backs of working families by proposing additional austerity measures. This action will further financially stress families already overwhelmed by the economic impact of COVID-19. In relation to that tax cut, we also need to examine healthcare. COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted shortcomings in our healthcare system, directly related to Republican measures and refusal to expand Medicaid. There are healthcare waivers as well. They're not cost effective, nor do they cover more people than the expansion of Medicaid. In relation as well to the tax cuts, we remember the severe tax cuts that they did to education. In response, we need to go ahead and make sure that our teachers get the balance of their $5,000 pay raise. We need to make sure that teachers are compensated for the important and hard work they do. We also need to ensure that public schools do not lose funding to private school vouchers or scholarship programs. Finally, we need to ensure that children that lacked internet access during the pandemic do not fall behind their classmates.
Okay, Lisa Campbell, would you have supported the tax cuts that was approved in this legislative session?
I think tax cuts across the board can be a great thing for our citizens, but if and only if we can make sure that all of our other programs that are so desperately needed can be funded as well. And one of the things that I see that's going to be one of our greatest challenges facing the legislature in 2021, because these same questions are going to come up. How do we pay for all of our the programs that we've enacted to help our constituents make it through this economic downturn? And life after COVID and our ability to change, I think, is going to be our biggest challenge. All the scientists, the economists, the academics, the policymakers are warning that our way of life may never be quite the same again. And I don't think this means that we'll be forever in the same place of contagion, but this type of preparation will be a part of our new normal. And what we need to change is not just about how we react to taxes or budgets or disease. It's also about how do we prepare for global warming? How do we address increasing disparities between the rich and the poor and the increased need for stronger cooperation? On a global scale and also here in Georgia, I think the most important challenge facing the legislator will be our willingness and ability to change. So that might mean looking at the budget in new ways. And this is not going to be easy for a legislature steeped in 200 years of tradition. If this pandemic has proven one thing, it's this. It's critically important for us to understand when the game has changed. We need to know how to change gears. We need to know how to have a backup plan, a contingency plan.
Thank you, Lisa. Your time's up.
Into our process.
Thank you, Lisa. Kyle, budget or tax cuts in the budget.
Tax cuts they propose. This seems to be a pretty consistent pattern over these last many years here in Georgia, which is where the legislature continues to cut taxes, which I agree with Lisa can be a very good thing and can be a very good economic stimulant for the people in our state, but not at the cost of services, right? The priorities for me should be in investments in public education, making sure that teachers get the resources that they need, making sure that schools have the resources that they need. I also want to make sure that we're investing in public transportation so that we have a public transportation system that's both environmentally sustainable for the future and is also usable and productive for the people who live here, and so much more, right? There's so many more projects that we should be working on in a state that should be bringing us forward instead of just continuing to cut the budget down year after year after year.
Thank you. Now, Lisa Campbell, what are your thoughts on House Bill 481 that was passed in the 2019 legislative session, Georgia's fetal heart rate bill?
Well, I believe that all people have the basic right of bodily autonomy and the basic right to affordable, quality health care. And restricting reproductive choices is not legal, and it perpetuates discrimination against women. In addition to my belief that bodily autonomy is a basic human right, I also champion the rights of people to make their own medical decisions with their own medical professional. I don't think legislators should be able to decide what is best when it comes to a person's physical or mental well-being, particularly related to birth control or family planning. For these reasons, as a candidate and as a legislator, I will work tirelessly to strike down Georgia's heartbeat ban and any other legislation seeking to restrict our rights to make our own medical decisions. We all may make personal choices that are different when it comes to healthcare and reproduction. We may choose one form of birth control or another. We may choose to explore fertility options. We may choose to have an abortion or not. But for all individuals, this bill denies us our individual guaranteed freedom to make personal health decisions, and striking it down protects all of us, ensuring we have the freedom to make the choices that are right for us and for our families.
Thank you. Kyle, your comments on House Bill 481?
Yeah, I agree with Lisa wholeheartedly. Of course, as pro-choice Democrats, I oppose any and all attempts to limit women's reproductive freedom in the 21st century. This goes back to kind of this central theme that I was getting at the beginning. We've advanced so much as a state. We've made so much progress in terms of equality, in terms of women's access to reproductive freedom, that to now take that away, to pass a bill that is illegal, that is not based on science, that does limit people's access to reproductive health care, it's just wrong, and it's counterproductive, right? This brings up another point, which goes back to that access to health care. In Georgia today, we have one of the worst maternal mortality rates in the country, right? In the country, the state of Georgia, it is more dangerous to be a mother and access healthcare than it is in a lot of third world countries. And so what we need right now is we need representatives who are going to work together to find solutions to make access to reproductive healthcare better, not try to pass bills that limit access, that make it more difficult to get safe legal abortion, to get safe legal access to any reproductive services that you need. That's the kind of representative that I would be. And it's a shame that that sort of legislation would pass in the 21st century.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. And now Elizabeth Webster. Let me start by saying I apologize. I wasn't following the chat thread, but you're saying you would like to respond to a comment that Lisa Campbell made?
Yeah, just very quickly, and I respect Lisa's perspective. One thing I just wanted to challenge is that we really need to stop, as Democrats, perpetuating Republican talking points such as, how are we going to pay for this? The fact is that when we want to pay for something, we find a way to pay for it. Just like we found billions of dollars to pay for a wall that we don't need, we can find the money to pay for the programs and services that will help people. So that was the only one thing that I wanted to challenge. So Jackie, thank you for that. Lisa, thank you for sharing that perspective.
Okay, so Lisa, did you want to address that?
I think that it's important that we keep talking, is the bottom line, and that we keep talking both with Democrats and Republicans. And I think it's also important that as we prioritize our budgets and our decisions, that we do so by understanding that it's important for all of us to be fiscally responsible. So in that same vein, I agree. We want to ensure that the programs that we invest in, education, healthcare, equal access to those, are the drivers. And I believe that we can come up with new innovative ways to fund those things that are important for all of us in the long run.
Great, thank you. Back to you, Elizabeth, your comments on House Bill 481.
Yes, House Bill 481. House Bill 481 outlaws abortion at 6 weeks before most women even know that they're pregnant. This unconstitutional bill criminalizes women and their doctors and is currently being challenged in court. It is inconsistent with scientific evidence, was strongly opposed by doctors and the medical community. It is designed to give the state permission to override the rights and interests of pregnant women. It needs to be repealed. Once repealed, we need to work on supporting women's economic empowerment, preserving access to abortion care, expand insurance coverage to increase access to contraceptives, protect funding for family planning services, strengthen sex education in schools, and finally, prevent college campus violence against women. That's my take on House Bill 481.
Thank you. Next question. Are additional anti-discrimination laws needed to protect Georgia citizens from discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations? Explain why or why not additional protections may or may not be needed. Kyle, we'll go with you first on this.
Yes, the answer is yes. The answer is undoubtedly yes. In fact, there's been, over these last couple years, specific hate crimes legislation proposed by Democrats in the State House specifically in making sure that LGBT Georgians have protections against any civil rights violations, violations against housing laws, in the full gamut. And unfortunately, these hate crimes bills, making it a hate crime to discriminate against LGBT people, haven't passed. And if you just sit there and think about, why is that the case? Why is it that our representatives don't recognize that discrimination against LGBT Georgians is a real thing, right? We need to make sure that we have those sorts of protections in progress.
Thank you. Elizabeth Webster.
As the only candidate of color on a panel, I feel I can speak specifically to this issue to explain why Georgia is failing to protect its citizens through ad hoc legislation rather than comprehensive civil rights legislation. At the state level, the answer is yes. Georgia is one of a handful of states that refuses to enact civil rights legislation. As a result, civil rights challenges default to the federal government. This made sense when states were the primary barrier to enforcing civil rights. But in recent years, as federal civil rights have weakened via judicial rulings, states have enacted civil rights and disability legislation that often exceed the scope and the breadth of federal protections, except for Georgia. At the state level, we need to pass HB 19, which provides comprehensive state-level civil rights protection for all individuals, from discrimination in housing, public accommodations, and employment. And finally, we need to pass House Bill 426, the hate crimes bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Campbell, are additional anti-discrimination laws needed?
Our entire platform is based on the idea that equality empowers. So yes, absolutely, I would support anti-discrimination laws to help prevent discrimination in all forms, including discrimination against gender, sexuality, age, background, ancestry, education, income. Enacting these laws will be an important first step, and we must take it, but we must also put equal investment into the practice and enforcement of anti-discrimination behaviors. So for example, if there are employers out there who are willing to hire someone who is recently released from prison, they have a felony in their background, that is awesome, and they're successfully implementing anti-discrimination hiring laws. But if I'm that person and I didn't receive equal access to quality education, I won't get that job because I don't have the skills that are needed. Or what if my job is far from my home and I was denied a car loan because of the color of my skin, and we didn't invest in mass transit? I won't get that job either. And it's a great first step to zone areas for multifamily affordable housing. But if I walk into my bank and because of my gender, I can't get a mortgage, I can't live there. And what if I work 30 years at my job, then I'm retired, but I still need to work in order to make ends meet? And when I go to the interview and they see my gray hair and my wrinkles, they determine I'm overqualified and I won't get the job. Laws are definitely needed to ensure equal application of choice, and anti-discrimination happens when we have an entire system and community that actively works together.
Thank you, Lisa. Your time's up.
How all the layers work.
Thank you. And then one last question. What are your policy views on reducing gun violence and improving school safety? And we'll go with Lisa first on this one.
This is another area where for too long, the gun issue has been discussed in public forums almost exclusively as a right for citizens to bear arms, which I do support. But what about the right of all Georgians to live a life free from the constant fear of being shot in our own house, backyard, or school? I think the people of Georgia, House District 35, are ready for responsible gun safety laws and practices. And as your next Georgia House of Representatives, I will fight for two key changes to increase gun safety in Georgia. Number one, let's stop thinking of gun safety as a political issue and start viewing it as a public health issue. Number two, let's enact laws that are proven to increase gun safety, such as restraining orders for domestic abusers. If we start viewing gun violence as a public health issue, it means we start intervening in many places, just as we would for any other health issue. We look for ways to prevent the violence, and we work to implement awareness and safety programs. I'm hearing from our neighbors that we are not that far apart, that we all support laws and legislation that work to keep us safe from gun violence and protect our rights equally.
Elizabeth Webster.
Thank you. Georgia is a pro-gun, pro-open carry state, making gun control laws weak. Nationally, Georgia has the 17th highest gun death rate. Annually, gun violence costs Georgia over $2.8 billion. Taxpayers bear approximately 85% of that expense. Gun violence disproportionately impacts Black, Latinx, and women. Black men in Georgia between the ages of 18 to 24 are 14 times more likely than whites to be murdered by a gun. In acts of domestic violence, women are more likely to be killed with a gun. Although Georgia law bars a person from carrying or possessing a firearm within a school safety zone, there are numerous exceptions. Individuals may now carry concealed handguns anywhere on a college campus with few restrictions. Schools should be a safe haven, not a place where children fear getting shot. We need to make schools gun-free zones, reject proposals to arm teachers, enforce existing gun laws, pass extreme risk laws, provide mental health services in school, and finally, repeal SB 350 that allows guns to be used that were used in crimes to be put back on the street, and repeal HB 280 that permits campus carry. We need to keep our children safe, and we need to keep our neighborhoods safe.
Thank you. And Kyle Renato.
Yeah, I think if Matt could see all the videos, he could see I was nodding along everything Elizabeth just said. I agree 100%. Something I will add is that some of y'all might have seen this statistic, but March 2020, so last month, was the first month since 2002 that there was not a school shooting in the United States of America. First time since 2002. And the reason, of course, is because kids weren't in school. And if that's the reality that we're living in, that literally every March you can predict there'll be a school shooting somewhere where students are going to lose their lives, that's personal to me because I spend a lot of time in public schools, right? So we need to have more responsible gun safety legislation to make sure that we're keeping kids safe. I want to just be a little bit more specific about what we need to do here in Georgia. The first thing is we need to close the gun show loophole, which is a loophole that allows folks with a background of domestic violence or mental health issues, folks who shouldn't get access to a firearm. They have the ability to do that here in Georgia because we haven't closed that loophole. We need to be passing red flag laws to make sure that if there is somebody that's a threat in Georgia, they should not have access to a firearm as well. And we need to make sure that we keep our public spaces safe and secure. Right, we need to make sure that our public schools, our college campuses, our churches, our community gathering spaces, that all of those are secure and protected from violence of all kinds. And that's why it's really important that we get rid of these guns everywhere bills and instead make sure we have legislation that keeps us all safe.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Now we'll move into our 2-minute closing statements, and we'll start with Elizabeth Webster.
Hi. Okay. Thank you, all of you, Jackie, Matt, Lisa, Kyle. Thank you for the opportunity to share my positions on the issues presented. This district is my home, and I love my life here. My neighbors have watched my daughter grow up, and I've shared my neighbors' struggles and joys. Our district, like much of the country, is being confronted with challenges that require more than business as usual. Our district needs a progressive strategy that moves our community into the 21st century and beyond. Our district needs a leader that is part of the community and has the education and experience to understand the relationship between health, the economy, and how policy works. Together, we can restore hope in the American dream. Together, we can achieve the dream of equity, prosperity, and opportunity for all citizens. Tonight, I hope you heard something that moves you closer to choosing me as your candidate. I am Dr. Elizabeth Webster. I am the progressive candidate, and I am asking for your vote. Please visit electelizabethhd35.com to learn more about me, my policy positions, donate, and volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Kyle Renato.
Well, thank you. As Elizabeth said, I want to thank everybody for tuning into this. I'm always amazed about the number of people who spend their evenings getting invested and knowledgeable about the political candidates running. I want to thank you for your involvement. I want to thank everybody for running for this office. I think just the last thing I want to say is a plug to make sure that everybody requests their mail-in ballot and participates in this election, not just on June 9th, but also on November 3rd. Because if there's one thing that we've all learned from watching this today, it's that the three of us actually agree on pretty much every policy, right? We were all going to be better representatives than the folks that we currently have in office right now. So I want to commit right now to all of us, no matter who is the nominee. We all have to work really hard in November 2020 to make sure that Joe Biden's the next president of the United States and to make sure that we're electing Democrats up and down the ballot, because it's so important to all the issues that we care about. It's important to making sure that we protect access to reproductive freedom. It's important to making sure that everybody has access to affordable health care. It's important to making sure that we keep our voting rights, that we have environmental policy, that we have gun safety, all the issues that we care about. We have that in common. And when we come together this June, as well as this November, we're going to win, and we're going to bring fresh representation to our community in the 21st century.
Thank you, Kyle. And now we'll go to Lisa Campbell.
Thank you all again for tuning in, and I agree with Kyle. Go Democrats, and let's get out the vote. Right now, we are all trying to protect our lives as our shared health and our economic well-being is put at risk due to this terrible pandemic, and our way of life is undergoing a paradigm shift unlike anything we've ever experienced. We're quickly approaching that now delayed Democratic primary to choose who will lead the challenge to unseat Ed Setzler, perhaps one of the most dangerous legislators in our state house. What I've heard from many of you is you're ready for a new way forward. You're seeking a moderate voice from a trusted leader who will help us emerge from this crisis with renewed energy. What I'm hearing from you is that during this time of anxiety, we need a candidate who brings one characteristic more than any other, and that is strong leadership. I'm hearing from you that we need a representative who has the experience to rally our constituents to create new solutions. I'm hearing from you that you want a legislator who listens, really listens with respect and a true desire to understand your needs and create practical ways to strengthen job opportunities, provide achievable paths for financial stability, and work together to create an enriching environment of equality so our families have the opportunity to flourish and thrive. I'm hearing you're frustrated with extreme laws, hidden agendas, and the constant chipping away of our democratic values, rooted in the idea that respect and dignity for every Georgian is essential to our shared success. We need a leader who has the experience to develop long-range plans and help us become better prepared. And as your next and your first elected female representative in this district, I will be this leader who brings the experience necessary to fight and win on the issues that matter most. I would be honored to be that leader, and I look forward to earning your trust and your vote.
Thank you, Lisa. And with that, that concludes our town hall this evening for House District 35. I'd like to thank Dr. Elizabeth Webster, Kyle Renato, and Lisa Campbell, Democratic candidates for House District 35. This is one in a series of town halls. We will be having additional town halls next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, where we'll be talking to school board candidates. So please visit our website, cobbdemocrats.org, for more information on these candidates, on our town halls, and vote by mail. Please vote June 9th and vote by mail. Thank you and good night.
Thank you all. Good night.